Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Tonight we look at two issues of civil liberty that demand urgent attention. In part 2, after offensive comments by a BJP minister in Goa, we ask, has the time come to decriminalize homosexuality, and will a BJP government bite this bullet or duck the issue? But first, an issue that's hit the front pages and caused widespread concern. The decision to offload Greenpeace activist Priya Pillai on the grounds that her proposed meeting with British parliamentarians was anti-national. Was this done by politicians in the Home Ministry or by officials in the Intelligence Bureau? Did either have a right to take the step? And is it a denial of civil liberties and fundamental rights? That's the debate in part 1.
I've read from the media that there is a lookout notice in my name, but I have not been served a lookout notice. And the more importantly, why should there be a lookout notice against me? I'm not a criminal.
And now joining me to discuss the Priya Pillai incident and the possibility this has happened before and could happen again is the Executive Director of Greenpeace India Summit H, the former editor of The Hindu Siddharth Vardarajan, the well-known Supreme Court lawyer Dushyant Dave, Congress spokesperson and MP Abhishek Singhvi, and BJP spokesperson GVL Narasimha Rao. But first, let's hear from Priya Pillai exactly what happened on Sunday morning when she was denied permission to travel to London and offloaded from that plane. Priya Pillai, let me start by asking you to tell us precisely what happened at Delhi airport on Sunday morning when you tried to board a flight to London for a meeting with British MPs.
When I reached the airport, the Bureau of Immigration authorities there told me that I cannot travel, I cannot leave this country because my name is part of a database and the government of India forbids people in that database from leaving this country.
Now, did you check with the authorities where this order to stop you had come from?
I checked them. I asked them which department is made this list, who's the authority, who in government of India, but they did not give me any answer. They said, ma'am, these are orders from above. We are just following orders. The government of India doesn't want you to leave this country and travel outside this country.
And this was told to you specifically by the immigration officer. He specifically said the government had stopped you.
Yes, this was told in by the immigration officer V.K. Ojha as well as his superior, Miss Sushma Sharma. Both of them have given me the same explanation. This is all that they've given me.
And now at this point, your bags were offloaded and you were told to go home. Is that right?
Yes, my bags were offloaded. I was given no explanation. I was treated and humiliated as if I'm a criminal who is running away from the law of the land, and I was asked to go back home without any explanations with an offload stamp on my passport, which will stay there for the rest of my life, and I'll have to keep explaining to people why that stamp was put when I don't even know why I have that stamp on my passport.
Now, 3 days have passed since this happened. Have you had any explanation at all from the government about why you were stopped?
No, I've heard media reports that there is a lookout notice. It's not been served to me. I'm hearing lots of stories. The stories have been changing. New excuses are coming every day. All that I feel is that I have an opinion that is different from the opinion of the government, and I am being held liable for that. I am being treated like a criminal because I happen to have an opinion that is not in sync with the opinion of the government. My right to freedom of movement has been violated, as well as my right to freedom of speech and expression has been totally violated. These are violations of my fundamental rights, which is a gross violation. This is totally unacceptable.
Thank you, Priya. Dushyant Dave, how do you react to what you've just heard? In your eyes and in your estimation as a lawyer, is this legal, or prima facie have the authorities exceeded their powers and acted high-handedly?
There is no doubt about that, that the authorities have acted unconstitutionally, they have acted illegally, they have acted improperly, and if I may say so, they have acted with a very extremely vindictive manner. This is not expected. because two reasons. One, right to personal liberty includes right to travel abroad, which has been settled by the 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court in Maneka Gandhi's case. Right of freedom of expression, speech and expression, includes the right not only to speak freely in India, but also it includes the right to speak freely outside India, as Supreme Court has said in Maneka Gandhi's case. Government and every authority is bound by it. And in fact, I am really shocked that in these circumstances, the passport authorities or the FRRO, whatever it is, the authority, acted at the instance of the Intelligence Bureau, which has no power as per the judgment of the Delhi High Court, which is, really a pointer in this direction. And they should really never have acted.
Okay.
So the entire episode, frankly, raises very serious issues. It raises an extremely unsavory, manner in which the government is acting. And it does not reflect, unfortunately, well on government, which really has been elected with a massive support, seems to speak in the name of the people and really wants to protect environment. Ultimately, this lady was going to speak about environment. BJP in its manifesto for the election had said that we will protect environment. Why should they be shy of it? I don't understand.
Siddharth Varadarajan, let me come to a second aspect of what Priya Pillai there spoke about. She revealed that the immigration officer had told her that there's a database of people not permitted to leave. Do you think it's possible that there could be more Priya Pillais who are being wrongly, unconstitutionally, as Dushyant Dave says, stopped from leaving the country?
I think it's quite possible, and what disturbs me in this entire episode is that it's been 3 days now, 3 days of fairly, and take responsibility. I would much rather that we got a cogent explanation. It may well be indefensible, but an explanation from the government so that we can argue then the rights and wrongs of the way in which that decision was taken. But the very fact that there is subterfuge, there is secrecy, there is an unwillingness to engage or to provide information on the record makes it very clear that the government doesn't really have a legal leg to stand on.
The other interesting thing, Abhishek Singhvi, is that the Indian Express suggests that in fact what happened did not happen at the instructions of the Home Ministry, but oddly enough at the request of the Intelligence Bureau. And an Intelligence Bureau official has told the Express, and I'm now quoting, "We had information that she was going to visit London for activities that were not in the nation's interest, and therefore presumably for that reason the IB stepped in and stopped her." How does the Congress party respond to this story from the Express, which presumably is true?
Well, of course, I cannot vouch for the veracity of a story, but the whole issue, including what you've just said about the Express, smacks of utter lawlessness. Where is the question, Karan, in a democratic republic, for an officer of the IB to give his view about against public interest or national interest? There is a method. There are, I don't want to sound technical, there are laws, there are judgments of the Supreme Court way back from Satwant Singh, and the most famous being Maneka Gandhi, about how and when you can stop a person. And tomorrow, if an IB officer is to opine that you are a threat to something, there has to be some proceeding. But let me add a different facet, Karan, apropos what you just said a minute ago. There has been a general approach of the BJP, of the Gujarat BJP, and of the present Prime Minister, then Chief Minister of Gujarat in particular, about a very sarcastic, demeaning, patronizing, condescending, fun-making attitude to what has been called Jholawalas. They made fun of it in vituperative language when the NSC, I may not agree with many things of the NSC, you may not agree, but they made some very good suggestions as well. So the whole approach was, who are these Jholawalas? This whole NGO is out to destroy. I remember when I was chairman of the Lokpal committee, the kind of suggestions came a lot from quarters other than the Congress about what it should do with NGOs in the Lokpal bill. So I think that whole mindset, that whole philosophy is now manifesting itself in some of these instances. And the last point, very half a minute,
I'll come to wider points in a moment's time.
No provision of law, no judgment, no proceeding.
Absolutely. Let's for a while focus on Priya Pillai herself. Let's broaden it later to what this reflects about the government's attitudes to NGOs. Let's not confuse the two at this stage. First, Mr. Narasimha Rao, as far as the Priya Pillai incident is concerned, this reveals a complete lack of respect for fundamental rights, civil liberties, as well as the critical democratic right to dissent. And as Dushyant Dave said, citing Supreme Court judgments in the Maneka Gandhi case, this is totally unconstitutional. Are you prepared to accept that the government has behaved wrongly, or can you find some way of defending your government?
I think fundamental rights are justiciable, and you have great legal experts on your panel. And if this particular instance is considered to be a violative of fundamental rights, they can certainly take recourse to legal remedies. So as far as situations of this context of this nature are concerned, the world over, in the United States, repeatedly and routinely, people are prevented, barred from traveling without any explanation.
Just a moment. You're ignoring the fact that Dushyant Dave, one of the leading Supreme Court lawyers in our country, has just said, Mr. Narasimha Rao, that this is a flagrant, blatant breach of a Supreme Court judgment in the Maneka Gandhi case. The right to travel abroad is a fundamental right which flows from the right to liberty. The right to speak against your country to British parliamentarians is part of freedom of expression. How come you've breached both?
But then there are reasonable restrictions on every issue, and you cannot be indulging in so-called anti-development, anti-national activities as some of these NGOs are perceived to be involved in. There is enough evidence, there is a history to this, and Abhishek Manu Singh conveniently ignores that it was his
just a
government
moment.
2 years ago.
You're alleging, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. You're alleging that the intention that she had of speaking to British parliamentarians about the coalfields in Mahan, which she says and believes were transgressing on the rights of tribals, that intention is anti-national. Let me bring in Dushyant Dave, who's a lawyer. Unlike you, you're not. You're a psephologist and a party political spokesman. Dushyant Dave, is a desire and an intention to speak to British parliamentarians about the fact that coalfields in Mahan are transgressing on the rights of tribals anti-national in a democratic country like India?
No, let me put it this way, that under their existing circular of 2010, which government has issued, and there is no other law which can prevent a citizen from going, outside the country, they can only prevent an undesirable person who is required to answer criminal charges and nobody else. They can't touch anybody else. Now, there is no doubt that Ms. Pillai was not facing any criminal charge, 1. 2, this is not a case where there is any issue about national security or national interest involved. Yes, as Mr. Rao says, she may be against development agenda of the Prime Minister, but that's not a ground to prevent citizens from going abroad. I mean, every day, many of us lawyers appear in the court and, argue on environmental basis. Take, for example, Mr. Salve. As amicus, every day, he is doing a great service for the environment. Tomorrow, will the government stop Mr. Salve from leaving the country? I mean, it is really unfortunate that this, frankly, I would really urge to Mr. Rao, the government, to really retrieve this situation and reassure the citizens that this will not happen in future. It was a mistake made by some small police officer in the Intelligence Bureau, and government will correct it.
Well, let me stop you there. Dushyant Dave, let me stop you there. Mr. Narasimha Rao's big finger has gone up. It's been up for a while. Go ahead, Mr. Narasimha Rao. But before you answer, the specific point you need to address is that you are in blatant breach of fundamental rights, the Constitution. You've acted high-handedly, and more importantly, being critical and a dissenter of Mr. Modi's belief in development doesn't mean it's anti-national. There are many types of development possible. You can disagree with Mr. Modi's model without being anti-national.
Karan, I think let us not ignore the background. Possibly Mr. Dave is not aware of certain facts. I think there are investigations, there are cases that are pending against her. So it's not that there is absolutely no record of it, number one. Number two, Greenpeace, their funds have been blocked.
I'm sorry.
Along with a few other
I'm
NGOs.
sorry, you're casting aspersions and I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Mr. Narasimha Rao. Mr. Narasimha Rao, you're factually wrong and that's why I'm interrupting you.
No,
you have brought, forgive me. You spoke about cases against her and that is a background you said we have to take on board. I'm going to inform you about those cases. The truth of the matter is that she was detained in January 2014 and accused of criminal trespass and transgression, but she was released on bail and there was no condition set on that bail and she was not restricted from travelling abroad. Yes. Therefore, this so-called background is not germane to and is not an explanation for stopping her on Sunday. That's why I'm interrupting you. You're bringing up something wrongly and you're casting aspersions on her, which is unjustified.
No. I'm only saying, I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think, Karan, let us look at the broader perspective. My suggestion to you is, my request is, let's not miss the larger context.
What's the larger context?
More than 20 countries in the last 2 years have passed legislations against foreign funding. Against foreign funding of NGOs. There is an international and anti-national angle to the whole thing. These domestic protests are not.
What is the foreign funding involved? Are you seriously telling me? Are you seriously telling me that receiving money from Greenpeace for air travel is tantamount to foreign funding of NGOs? Because if you are, you're probably running up against things that courts will dispute. Courts will dispute that interpretation. You're silent and I'm glad you're silent. Let me bring in Abhishek Singhvi on that point.
Money had been received in foreign funding.
No, just a moment.
That is the background. No.
Greenpeace's funding has been stopped by the government for several months. Let's not confuse the past with what's happening in the present. Mr. Singhvi, the allegation being made by Mr. Narasimha Rao is that foreign funds were received from Greenpeace International to pay for the ticket on which Priya Pillai was to travel. Does that constitute foreign funding in the sense in which it would be anti-national and a breach of the law? Let me speak to Abhishek Singhvi and then I'll come to Dushyant Dave and Siddharth Varadarajan. Go ahead, Mr. Singhvi. Can you dispute and reject the point made by Narasimha Rao?
Well, absolutely. It has only to be stated to be rejected. There is a fundamental difference between reimbursement of travel expenses versus funding. And to suggest that somebody invited to speak and the speech has to not at all conform to any governmental norm. Unless he speaks something incendiary, something subversive, he has a full right to disagree with the government of the day. That's what makes India different from all its neighbors. So first of all, there is no issue of foreign funding. Secondly, it is nothing but a complete incapacity to hear a dissenting voice to your viewpoint. And it violates every norm of free speech, fundamental right. The government has not given any remote defense or pretense of a defense. It's no point giving a defense on your channel. This is an old story now by the standards of political time taken. Not even the remotest defense is there for the simple reason that no case exists.
Let me bring in Siddharth Varadarajan.
It's not something political. It is something which shows that it should be looked at very seriously by the government, and they should accept in good spirit that they were at fault and come up with a simple apology or a simple retraction.
Siddharth Varadarajan, let me put this to you.
There's no harm done. There's no ego in this.
I heard you, Mr. Singhvi. Siddharth Varadarajan, let me put this to you. Many people believe, not just journalists, many ordinary laymen, that this episode seems to make India look like China, a country where dissent is deemed anti-national, where dissenters are not permitted to travel abroad because the authorities fear that they will reveal a seamy side of the state or hidden secrets that the authorities want kept secret. Is that an unfair comparison for people to make at this point, or do you think it's perfectly justified?
I think it's a very, very ominous development. When I first heard that this young woman was stopped at the airport, I asked myself, when is the last time, as a journalist, somebody who's been in the field for 20, 25 years, when is the last time I've heard of an Indian citizen being stopped in this manner from traveling abroad to give a talk? And I couldn't think of a single instance. Sure, you have examples of foreign citizens whom the government doesn't allow into the country. That's a separate matter. but to prevent an Indian citizen from going abroad, to my mind, represents a qualitative increase in the assault on civil liberties. And unless this is reversed, and unless the government gives some kind of explanation, the very fact that nobody is willing to come on the record, you have all kinds of idiotic explanations being trotted out to PTI and the media, etc., none of which add up, and all of which are done on background. So anonymous sources claim, well, Ms. Pillai was out on bail, blah, blah, blah. But nobody is willing to attach their name to these explanations. So I think it is a highly ominous development. This is something that, if it's left unchecked, will become the thin end of the wedge, I'm afraid, where the government will show its intolerance. So where does this all end?
Let me bring you in at that point, Dushyant Dave, because this is sadly not the first time that action has been taken against Greenpeace activists or campaigners. In September 2014, a gentleman called Ben Hargreaves, a UK-based Greenpeace campaigner, was refused entry to India even though he had a valid work visa. Before that, in June, a lady called Penny Verasanso, again a British academic, who was to attend a meeting in Hyderabad, was turned away from the airport. And of course, foreign funding of Greenpeace has been stopped as well. And some of this, by the way, let's be honest, goes right back to the time of UPA. It's not all happened by NDA by any means. Do you therefore get the feeling that Greenpeace in particular is being picked upon and targeted by the Modi government in this instance, but earlier by UPA as well?
I'll come back to your question a little later. First, let me clarify one thing. Under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act of 2010, there is a beautiful distinction between a foreign contribution and foreign hospitality. While foreign contribution may have been prohibited so far as Greenpeace India is concerned, foreign hospitality is not prohibited for any citizen unless he is a government servant or a judge or a legislator. So that distinction, I think the government should have known, that merely because she has received a ticket, she can never be said to have received a fund. So that's completely, absolutely, unjustified remark, and Mr. Rao perhaps should know the actual position in law. Secondly, I don't think it is fair for Mr. Rao to say that, she should go for, for legal remedy. Of course she will go for legal remedy, and I am willing to say on your channel that if she approaches me, I will be more than happy to appear for her free of charge. That's not the issue. Issue is that government must be large-hearted, and a large-hearted government that Mr. Modi proclaims to be representing, nation should really have the capacity to admit its mistake and apologize.
Okay.
Now, having said that, there is a difference between the right of a citizen. Ms. Pillai is an Indian citizen. It's a different matter what is done about the foreigners coming into India. There is a completely different situation. They don't have, the rights that Indian citizen may have. Now, Mr. Rao, for example, spoke about America prohibiting a lot of people, but those are terrorist-related activities. Those are not activities where people are environmentalists and are stopped by US government.
Okay.
Far from it. In United States, the rights of citizens are much more jealously guarded, both by administration and by courts. So I don't think we should bring that parallel.
Okay.
I really urge Mr. Rao to prevail upon the government to save the situation. An apology should do and remove that stamp from our passport, so that brings an end to a matter.
Well, let me stop you there. Mr. Rao, there's no doubt that practically every... Yes, I'm seeing your finger, Mr. Rao. You can put it down. That's why I'm coming to you. I've seen your finger. There's no doubt that not just everyone on the panel tonight, and we haven't even given Mr. H a chance to talk. He's the Executive Director of Greenpeace. He's now joining us. Not just everyone on this panel tonight, but probably everyone in the press, and the vast majority, I would feel certain, of Indian people feel that you have not only acted high-handedly, but you have done a grave injustice to an Indian citizen. Remember, she's an Indian citizen. She has the right to dissent. It's a fundamental right. And I urge you, not just for the good of your party, but in the higher interests of Indian democracy, apologize. Ask her for forgiveness and apologize.
Karan, this is Samit H from Greenpeace.
No,
yes, just ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Rao.
The studios are joining in late.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Rao, then I'll come to Mr. Stage. Go ahead, Mr. Rao. Answer.
No,
Karan, this is Samit H from Greenpeace.
We have focused only on one event and not looked at the sequence of events. Because there is... So there are, you see, please understand, there are more than 20 countries of the world which have named all such NGOs. We are giving them a lot of, they pass off as independent voices in this country.
Mr. Rao, this
but
is an
any
Indian
agency
citizen.
which receives foreign funding
Mr. Rao,
is
she's
labeled
an Indian
today throughout the world as
Are
foreign
you forgetting
agents,
that fact?
as foreign propagandists.
Mr. Rao, you're forgetting a fundamental
Fine, but you are doing foreign propaganda.
I am not doing foreign propaganda. And please stop that arrant nonsense.
Defines all over the world.
Please stop that arrant nonsense. This
all
is not foreign propaganda.
Foreign propaganda.
As an
Please
Indian
understand
citizen
the perspective.
anchor, I am standing up for the rights of another Indian citizen.
This is what the whole world believes. If you do not believe, it doesn't really change.
Our whole world does not believe it, Mr. Rao.
The whole
you
world
may believe it. Don't make
foreign
yourself
lobbyism,
the plural.
foreign agents.
She's not a foreign agent. She's an Indian citizen.
US, Russia, Israel, a host of 20, 30 countries do it.
Let me bring in Mr. H at that point.
Let's not
ignore
the background.
Because
You
you're
are
now
only
casting
focusing on one
aspersions
event.
on Mr. H's organization.
We don't want to be Russia.
Are you, Mr. H, as an Indian working for Greenpeace, and is your colleague Priya Pillai, as an Indian working for Greenpeace, a foreign agent? Are you anti-national? Is your right to go to Britain and advise British parliamentarians about the trespassing in Mahan coalfields on the rights of tribals an anti-national act? That is what you're being accused of by Mr. Narasimha Rao, the BJP spokesman. Go ahead and answer.
Thanks. First of all, Karan, I had to join in late because I think there was a technical error.
Don't worry.
Let's
not waste time on that. Answer the question. We're running out of time, Mr. H.
What has been said.
Answer that specific question because we're running out of time.
All I have to say is that Priya Pillai's offload stamp in the passport is a highly deplorable act. It is against the democratic norms of this country. It is Priya is guaranteed by the constitution of this country under section 19(1)(a) for freedom of speech. She is not a criminal. This is highly deplorable. The clandestine method with which